Hello, I'm Momita Bakshi Chatterjee, and joining me today is Arundhati Bhattacharya, Chairperson and CEO of Salesforce India. She's an eminent business leader, and she shattered the glass ceiling when she became the first woman to lead SBI in 2013. She retired from State Bank of India in 2017, only to start a brand new career innings with Salesforce in 2020. Thank you so much for speaking to PTI, ma'am.
You're welcome.
There is transformation of technology, and then there is career transformation. I want to start off by asking you, how was the shift from SBI to Salesforce?
Well, it's been quite exciting, to say the least. It's a new area, it's a new industry. And of course, I think the best thing is that IT today is one of the most exciting areas to be in. So, in a way, for me, it's been a huge learning experience. It's also been hugely, enthusing because I've had to sort of think over things, unlearn a lot of things that I knew, relearn a lot of them. And of course, it's been a constant journey of discovery of new people, new places, new ways of doing things, new ways of, reacting, new ways of selling, marketing. Means you name it, and I've sort of, definitely learnt about it.
You led a lot of digital transformation at SBI. I therefore want to ask you about this whole tech space. How important is digital transformation going to be for businesses and indeed for the country in general?
I think it's going to be extremely important because the pace of evolution of technology is really picking up. It's picking up at a rate that is almost unimaginable. I was just talking at the keynote today that it took 75 years to get 100 million phone subscribers. It took Netflix 10 years for the same number. It's taken ChatGPT just 2 months to get the same number of subscribers. So you can imagine how quickly technology is getting adapted, and not only adopted, it's also the way it is changing. And therefore, any organization that has, inefficient processes, systems, siloed data, manual processes, skill gaps, they are really going to fall behind. If they don't sort of pull up their socks and get going and look at digital transformation as something that's not something good to have, but it's something that's a must-have, unless they do that, their very existence itself will get threatened sooner rather than later.
How does Salesforce look at the India market, especially at a time when perhaps the global markets are showing signs of weakness?
So I think for us, the India market is extremely good. We believe that there is a lot that Indian industry needs to catch up on, especially where digital transformation is concerned, and especially where customer-centric digital transformation is concerned. Because while, we have been a country where the supply has always been sort of, far less than the demand. But the time is coming when, you are seeing that supply is becoming, more and more, common, to the extent that demand is something that's beginning to now rule the roost. And as long as that is the case, you will find that companies will have to come up to the demand of their customers. And therefore, the customer experience itself has to become far more superior than whatever it was in the past. And if that is the case, you do need to transform, and you need to transform digitally. Given the kind of population we have, we will not be able to address these customer needs unless we use technology in a very big way.
Is there a lot of headroom for that, for companies like Salesforce to, push ahead, being bullish and optimistic about the Indian market? Because perhaps, we're not so penetrated with technology as we can.
See, the fact is, India has two very big advantages. One advantage is that it has a population that is digitally very enabled, okay, and aware. The second advantage it has is the India stack, which means public good in the form of digital platforms on which people can play. Because of these two very important pillars, it's important and easier for Indian businesses to very quickly go digital. They have all the enabling pieces around them. they have the talent, they have the infrastructure. It's a question for the company to make up its mind that they really need to transform and give their customers the digital hyper-personalized experience. Once they make up their minds on that, once they're convinced that that's the best way to go for their own companies, for their own growth, they will do it. And when they do it, they will leapfrog. So I think that's the opportunity that Salesforce is seeing here today.
Let's talk about the emerging technologies, the area of artificial intelligence, generative AI, ChatGPT. How do you look at this AI, generative AI as an area? How do you look at it in terms of regulations, for instance? Does it require regulations to be in place? What kind of regulations? Will it lead to job losses like many are fearing?
So you know something, every time there's been an industrial revolution, people have talked about job losses. And actually speaking, that has never happened. In fact, more and more jobs have been created. I remember even when we were in the beginning of our career and computerization was coming into banking, there was a lot of pushback from the unions, from the labor activists saying that there would be job losses. I haven't seen job losses to that extent. But newer types of jobs, varieties of jobs have got created. And I'm sure it'll be the same again this time. There will be job losses temporarily maybe, while people reskill and upskill themselves. But at the end of it all, there will be newer types of jobs that will come about. And they will be jobs that will be richer in content, that will need people to be more creative, that will need people to be more empathetic, that will need people to really bring forth the human side of the of the job content of technology, as you say. Other than that, AI and generative AI, I think, are things that will really and truly democratize and make available to a lot of people things that we are not able to deliver to them today. If you look at a class of students, 60 students, they do not learn at the same pace, do they? But they are expected to. What happens as a result is that the people who are falling behind, they don't really get to learn, and the people who can be far ahead don't get to get ahead. So everybody comes down to a sort of common average mean, which doesn't really help anyone. However, when you start personalizing the curricula to fit each person's requirements, you will have many more people coming up to their potential. And their potential may be in different areas. Somebody might be good in sports, somebody might be good in music, somebody might be good in history. It all depends. But they will each come up to potential. Now, that is not something that can be delivered without the use of technology as well as generative AI. And that's where I think generative AI will have its day, because it will then enable people to have far better lives. Even if you talk about, say, things like medicine, you can today deliver medicine that addresses exactly the problem that is ailing you and not anybody else, because you are a separate person, your DNA is different. That is again feasible if AI is really used in the right way. So I think, these are things that are really going to help humanity reach a better level, a standard of living that we have never even thought about. We do need to go about it the right way. Where regulation is concerned, this is something that is evolving. We don't really know what exactly will be required, but like anything, it can have its good side and it can have its bad side. So to prevent its misuse, definitely, some amount of self-regulation or regulatory, maybe regulatory boards or whatever may be required at some point of time. But this is still open for discussion, as you know. Nothing really has come out of it as of now.
How do you see the regulatory landscape in India? Because it's evolving and evolving at a fast pace. There's a Digital India bill, which is right around the corner. The data protection bill, likely in monsoon session of Parliament. What kind of change in rules of games is it going to herald for all kinds of stakeholders, enterprises, customers, individuals?
So at this point of time, of course, unless and until the bill gets passed, it's difficult to tell you exactly what the changes will be. But having said that, I think the lawmakers wish to make one thing very clear, that the power of the data should be in the hands of the individuals, not in the hands of large corporates. That if you do give your data to be used, you should give it understanding what the ramifications are, not because you're merely being asked to tick a box. So, people want to ensure that you have your rights in place, and I think that is perfectly correct, because at the end of the day, it is important to be able to understand what that data is going to be used for, whether you are okay with your data being used in that manner. There are lots of people who share the most, intimate secrets on Facebook, knowing full well that the whole world is going to see it, and they are not bothered. That's fine. But there are many others who would not like it to be that way. People need to have choice. It should not be something that is imposed on people. But if people exercise their choice, then it's fine.
There seems to be a tug of war going on between tech employers and employees in bringing back people to their physical workspaces. We have seen a large IT company flagging how the attrition amongst women has been higher lately. How do you look at this entire situation? Is it going to be a challenge for companies? And what is the best way for companies to go about it to ensure that women indeed don't get left out when it comes to, bringing them back at their workplace?
So, I think, broad brush regulations will not work. In respect of at least where women are concerned and getting them back to work, one has to have some empathy and understanding as to what is it that is preventing them from coming back. If there are adequate reasons for the same, I think, we need to have that flexibility. So the rule of the game is flexibility. It's not something that you impose on people, but, having said that, I also know of a lot of women who are quite enthused about coming back. They like getting away, from the issues that are there at home at all points of time. It's like, the experiment that probably y'all also must have done at school, where they give you a small book and ask you to hold it out in your hand. If you hold it for 10 minutes, it doesn't weigh much. But if you're made to hold it for an hour, your arm feels too heavy. It's the same thing about women coming out to work. When they come out to work, they leave certain of their worries behind, and they take up certain different challenges. When they get back home, they leave those challenges behind in the office, and they're back in the home space and take up those challenges again. So it enables them to have a balance between work and home. Being at home all the time, they might actually have to take on the responsibilities of both work and home at all points of time, which also can be very stressful. So I don't think, these are things that can be decided with a broad brush, as I said. One needs to be flexible. One needs to understand with empathy what is the situation a person is going through and take a call accordingly. And again, flexibility is the name of the game.
Do you think there need to be more women in corporate boardrooms, and how would that be achieved?
Absolutely. There needs to be far more women in corporate boardrooms. I think it's a question of changing mindsets. Because very often what happens, I have found that, a lot of people in the boardrooms are people from C-suites. Now, there are not that many women who have been in C-suites, merely because the number of women have been limited. It will happen over a period of time, but at this point of time, it's definitely skewed towards men. Now, the C-suite men, when they retire, they tend to get into boards. And when you try to put women in, if they have not been in C-suites, many of the people or many of the board members think that there would be a lack of parity, which is not really the case. My own feeling is that people need to be open-minded about allowing women into the boardroom. Once they allow women who have been executing well, who have been planning well, who have a good reputation behind them, no matter if they have reached the C-suite or not, once they allow them in, they will realize that these people bring in a lot of value. And the more they allow these people in, the women in, the more they will want women to be there. So I think, again, it's a matter of time, but it's also a matter of, ensuring that we take action on this, that all of us are deliberate about getting more women in, about bringing in more diversity, whether in the workplace or in the boardroom. There has to be a deliberate focus on this. And if there is focus, it's going to happen.
Arundhati, I hope more women follow in your footsteps. Thank you so much for speaking to PTI.
Thank you. Thank you so much.